You right there guys, this is Dale of Lone Wombat Airsoft, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Silverback PP-19 Bizon. Now before we go into the video, I'm just going to put some links up here and here, so if there's a specific bit you want to skip to, say you want to find what my first impressions were like, what the shooting test was like, or maybe you just want to go straight to the end and find out if I think you should buy it or not, then you can click on the links on either side of me and it's going to go straight to that part of the video. Before we dive in as well, I'd like to make clear that I've owned this gun for a couple of months now. I haven't taken it just straight out of the box and decided to review it. I've clocked in a lot of hours at different skirmish sites, so I've really got to know the gun, and most importantly I've given it a chance to malfunction. So without further ado, let's just dive straight into the video. Now, the real steel Bizon is a Russian 9mm submachine gun developed by Izmash in the 1990s. On the design team was Viktor Kalashnikov, the son of the famed AK-47 designer Mikhail Kalashnikov, and also Alexei Dragunov, the son of Yevgeny Dragunov, who was of course responsible for the SVD sniper rifle. In its conversion to an airsoft gun, obviously it's made by Silverback Airsoft. Now, this is the first gun the company has ever produced. They have made some accessories such as molly pouches, sights, that kind of thing, but this is the first AEG ever to come out of them. It will either come as a fully assembled and ready to go piece of kit out of the box, or if you have a spare version 3 gearbox lying around, you can order it as a separate kit and build it up yourself from there. So, what else do you get in the box once you order your Silverback Bizon? Well, obviously you've got the AEG that comes with it, but the main thing that you're going to get is foam, and lots of it. They've covered the entire product in this really dense, high impact resistant foam, which I'm really quite pleased with. Because they've covered the whole thing, there's absolutely no way that this is going to get damaged in transit once you order it. As well as your Bizon, you also have an included 160 round mid-cap magazine. Yes, this is the magazine, we'll go into that a bit later on. Also included is an instruction manual. It's a bit light on wording, but it has some very detailed and in-depth pictures in it, including a very nice exploded diagram of how everything assembles. So quite nice, that one. Also, it's just this little card with your serial number of the Bizon on it, and that's about it. The box is really sparse on extras for your product, but at the end of the day you've ordered a Bizon and that's the only thing you're really wanting. So let's take a look at the gun itself. Now, the first thing you're going to notice when you pick this gun up is how sturdy it is. Now, this is due to the full steel construction of the gun. There is absolutely zero zinc metal, pot metal on this gun at all. Full steel construction. The only polycarb bits on it are the pistol grip at the back and the mag at the front here. Now, because of this, it puts it slightly on the weighty side. It comes in at about 3 kilograms, which, while it's completely manageable, it's just a little bit heavy for something that's supposed to be a fast, light, CQB orientated gun. On the subject of CQB, it's a little bit long for something of its class as well. We measured it up against my Type 97 and found that they were exactly the same length with the stock fully extended. Now, this caused me a little bit of trouble when we went to the embassy in Leicester, especially when you're trying to go around corners or if you're in a doorway. It's just a little bit too long to get around those corners, so you need to have the stock folded away. Now, to fold the stock, there's just a little button on the side here. You depress that and the stock will come loose and you mount it on like so. Now, you have to put some upwards force on this when you're trying to mount it into position because it doesn't fit brilliantly onto the pin. Now, it isn't particularly good, to be honest, like that. There have been many times where I wanted the stock folded away now and couldn't do it and had to try and lift it up, and it just wastes time really. And if you don't do that, if you let it bang against this pin all the time, it's going to come loose, and that's not something you want because this is a body pin. And it got to the stage one time where this was so loose it looked like it was about to fall out, so I was really concerned about that by one point. So, not a great fan of the stock, if I'm honest. So let's move on to something else. Let's have a look at the mag. Now, the mag is this large tube at the front of the gun here. Yes, it is the mag. It is not a shotgun. It is not a grenade launcher. I've had people ask me both of those questions. This is your 160 round mid-cap magazine. How you take it out is there's the tab at the bottom of the gun just here. Push it towards the mag and pull the mag down and out. And this releases the magazine. Now, one thing I'm trying to wrap my head around is why they can only fit 160 rounds in a mag this big. It is absolutely massive. I've had trouble trying to find pouches that accept this gun. Standard ones don't. It's just too thick and too high. I know Silverback Airsoft does sell some specialised molly pouches for the mags, and if you plan on getting the Bizon, I highly recommend you get those because standard ones just aren't going to cut it. Unfortunately, the mid cap is the only mag that's available for you. There are no high caps for this gun, which again I was slightly disappointed by. I mean, You even have the perfect excuse for a winding wheel at the front here, which is what it's used on the real steel one. So why they couldn't develop a high cap magazine for this baffles me, to be honest. But then again, I'm not an airsoft engineering designer, so it's not really my place to say. How do you mount the mag back on? If you just look at the front of the gun here, there are 2 tabs at the front. You clip it into position like so, line it up with the base of the gun, and just give it a good slap in for good measure, but make sure you line it up properly first. One thing I've noticed with it is even if it's hooked in at the front, there is still some side-to-side movement of the magazine, so you need to make sure it's correctly lined up before you slap it in, otherwise you might end up damaging the mag or the gun. There's been a couple of occasions where I thought it was in position, but it wasn't firing at all because the mag wasn't secured in place. So again, a little bit fiddly, not particularly big fan of that. Let's have a look at some of the other bits of the gun. The safety and fire selector, like any AK style gun, is found on the side just here. In the topmost position, it puts the gun on safe. If you push it down to the middlemost, it's now on fully auto, and if you push it right to the bottom, it's on semi-auto. Now when you first get this gun, this is going to be incredibly loose. What you're going to have to do is tighten it by gripping this part of the lever arm at the back here with some mole grips or something, and just tighten it up ever so slightly. And if you leave it standard, what you might find is when you're trying to fire it on full auto, the fire selector will drop down and go onto semi, which isn't really something you want in the middle of a firefight. One other thing, the hop-up of the gun is located just about here. If we pull the chamber across, you'll be able to access it just here. Now, it's a little lever type and it's very stiff. Now, this is good that it's stiff in terms of it's not going to come loose in the middle of a firefight and muck up your hop-up settings. But when you're trying to adjust it, it's a little bit fiddly, because you'll get to the point where you're nearly at the sweet spot for the hop-up and then your finger will slip and it will completely mess the whole thing up and you have to start again. What I really would have liked is a winder wheel, like I've seen on some other guns, but it does the job, certainly. It's just particularly fiddly. So if you want to access the internals of your Silverback Bizon, just like any other AK style gun, there's a tab at the back just here. You push this in, and then that removes the top cover and allows you access to your version 3 gearbox and the battery space. Now the battery space is just running along the top of the gun just here, and I've had absolutely no trouble running a twin stick 7.4 volt LiPo battery with this gun. Mechanically speaking, I've had absolutely zero problems with it. The motor, the gearbox, everything works completely fine with it. The only issue I have had is with the magazines, and that's when you'll get to around about the last 20 rounds in the mag and it'll start misfeeding every second or third shot. Now this is irritating being a mid-cap because you never know if you ran out of ammo or not, so when this happens to me I'm always wondering, do I need to change the mag? Has it jammed? Do I still have some rounds left in it? So you're fiddling around trying to get the mag in or out to check if it's got ammo. It just wastes time and it's a little bit irritating. But not including the magazines, I've had absolutely zero mechanical flaws with this. It's been incredibly consistent. So when we were last at Black Dagger Airsoft, we managed to get a chronograph testing for this gun. We were using 0.2 gram BBs for the chrono test.
351, 350, 351. 692, 691.
Now, as can be seen from the chrono test, it varies around about the 350 FPS mark, sometimes overstepping it, sometimes going a little bit low, but the consistency is quite good. Unfortunately, because it occasionally oversteps into 351, I know that some airsoft sites have 350 FPS as the absolute maximum limit and not just something that should be aimed for. So when you go to some of the sites, if it reads a 351, they might conclude that it is too hot. So what I recommend is that you research what your site preferences are for FPS before you invest in this, or you might have to get a lower powered spring for it. Also, when we were at Black Dagger, I managed to get in a shooting test for this gun. I measured out 30 meters and was using 0.25 gram BBs just to try and improve the accuracy of it ever so slightly. Now, I was lying prone when we were taking this test to try and eliminate as much body water as possible, but you should bear in mind that both this test was taken outdoors, so take a little bit of wind to factor with the results, and also ever so slightly some human error. Now, looking at the target from the shooting test, it's quite a varied spread across the top of it. Most of the shots hit it. There were occasional flyers that went to the tree or missed the target altogether, but 90% of the time you're going to hit a man-sized target at 30 metres, which means this gun is quite accurate. So, where do you want to be on the airsoft field to get the absolute most out of this gun? Now, whilst it's designed to be a CQB orientated platform, I don't recommend that you be the first person to go charging into a building or storming an enemy position. It's a little bit too long and a little bit too weighty, and in those kind of environments you might find yourself at a bit of a manoeuvrability disadvantage. And you especially don't want to get too close to your enemy, because if you get caught mid-reload, you are absolutely stuffed. It takes an age to change the mags in this, and if there's an enemy bearing down on top of you, you're pretty much done for. Now, what I would recommend is, because it has good accuracy and a decent hop-up unit, it can engage targets at the middle to long range. Try and stick with the main body with your force. Don't be the first person to go running up to them, but support them, follow them close behind. Now, one thing that I found about this gun that was quite surprising is it's really comfortable to use whilst prone. Because the shape of the mag is quite close to the body of the gun, it's really comfortable to go crawling around with and lying on your stomach. So what I'd recommend is do something a bit sneaky. Go for a more stealth-orientated approach. Try and crawl around the outside of the enemy, pop up in an unknown place, and just take them down on your terms. Now, this is a jack-of-all-trades gun. It can engage the enemy at long ranges and short ranges, and whilst it might not excel at any of those, you're never going to find yourself in a position where you can't fight back. So, to summarise then, the Bizon is a very robust and reliable platform, much like its real steel counterpart, but it's not without some of its flaws. And whilst I adore this particular airsoft gun and I've had a lot of fun with it, I'm finding myself unable to recommend it. It's just too impractical for the money they're asking. There are plenty of other AEGs on the market that can do the job just as well, and if not better than this one can. In fact, the only reason you're going to want to pick one of these up is because it's a Bizon. It's unique, it's different. You don't see many of these on the field. And don't get me wrong, it's a very competent AEG. There are just some better ones out there. But if you're dead set on getting a Bizon, my advice would be to wait for a few months, because I know that LCT Airsoft is cooking up their own version of a PP-19 Bizon, and looking at LCT's track record for the guns they produce, it might just turn out to be better than this one. Now, I really hope you've enjoyed my review of the Silverback Bizon. If you have any feedback you'd like to give me, questions you'd like to ask, feel free to leave them in the comments down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And until next time, this has been Dale of Lone Wombat Airsoft.